Today we're gonna talk about the original form of the adversary. We're gonna talk about Satan, but also the older forms of the same energy. And if we want to talk about Satan, we have to understand and consider what we are talking about. So, we are talking about Satan from a traditional Christian standpoint, as he was depicted in medieval literature. We are not talking about Samael. We are not talking about Shemyaza, we are not talking about Azazel. We are strictly talking about medieval Christian Satan. So let's talk about him for a second. Now, in medieval Christian literature and iconography, Satan is depicted as a horned black creature ruling a dark, torturous realm full of fire and brimstone, filled with dark, evil, treacherous spirits. And when you are calling Satan in that setting, the spirit you will call and energy you will call will kinda partially reflect that, but not exactly. In my experience, from my work with Satan, Satan was like a dark version of Lucifer. Now, I am not saying that Lucifer and Satan are necessarily the same spirit. What I am saying is that from my experience, Satan was like a darker version of Lucifer. Energy was really a mix of dark and red, and it was really adversarial, generating a lot of adversities in my life, a lot of struggles, and he is really heavily associated with the Black Sun, painful magic, spiritual transformation, and initiation. Now, how I personally work with Satan is I simply do the Black Sun meditation, utilizing a sacred space, rising method with the Black Sun. So I draw a circle around myself. I visualize the black sun around my third eye, penetrating the edges of the circle I am sitting in with its rays, and then I hold that visualization until I can feel the dark energy radiating from the edges of the circle. After that raising of the sacred space is achieved, I chant the chant Ha Shatan, Ha Shadim over and over again until Satan appears energetically with me in the circle. And then I usually give him my requests. Now, I don't have really good results with Satan regarding material stuff, but that's probably because I never requested them from Satan in large amounts. I usually request spiritual transformation, and I have a really good results with that. There is also a really deep overlap between energies of Satan and Set. So there could be like different versions of the same thing. So now when I explained my work with Satan, I am going to explain my work with one really older, much older and much powerful version of that energy, which is Shiva in his form of Bhairav. Now, from my experience, Shiva in his form of Bhairav and Satan are technically two variations of the same energy. They are so similar that I sometimes joke and claim that Bhairav is Satan before Satan. And how Bhairav is really described in Hindu mythology is a terrifying form of Shiva which destroys the ignorance through imposing enormous adversities upon the initiate. And surprise, surprise, that's pretty similar how Satan works. So, to me, those two energies, those two spirits are pretty close with each other. I kind of see them as two different culturally defined ways to come into contact with the same force. Now, a lot of people will kind of disagree, but I can only state my experience. Now, how I work with Bhairav is the following. So, you will see the yantra on the screen with me here. And this is the yantra which is known as Nalatava Shivanan. yantra. And Nalatava Shivanan is like a little bit sacred name of Bhairav. And simply draw this yantra or print it out loud. Raise the sacred space through any way you see fit. And chant the chant Nalatava Shivanan Atairanku Yananisya. And gaze into the yantra slowly. And repeat it over and over again until the energy of Bhairav is present with you. Now, when you work with Bhairav, I advise that you really call him to open up your energy centers / chakras, because he is a really good spirit for that, and his knowledge regarding that is really profound. I would also advise to not approach Bhairav as your first spirit. You need to have certain background with spiritual work if you want to approach Bhairav. He is definitely not for beginners. He is quite different from his Western counterpart Satan, in a sense that he is much more cruel and demanding. So, when we talk about Bhairav and Satan, their energy is pretty much similar from my experience, right? It's almost the same energy signature. But Bhairav is like 10 times more demanding, and 10 times more ridiculous at the same time. Everything I said about Satan applies to Bhairav, it's just 10 times worse. And I gonna say, like, if you wanna work with Bhairav, take the following routine, right? So choose some dark spirit who is kinda more friendly for beginners, right? Like Paimon or Agrad Batmalat, or you can go and work with some dark Hindu spirits if you want. It kinda doesn't matter what system you take, because all of those dark energies are connected to similar currents, and it kinda doesn't matter. Are you preparing to work with Bhairav by calling Agrad, or are you preparing to work with Bhairav by calling, from a tantric standpoint, like Rakshasa Lankini? It doesn't matter really. Like, we are talking about energy here, so what matters is that you really got mentally prepared. So you work with some of those spirits who are easier to work with for beginners. There is a bunch of tutorials on how to call them on my channel, and on other channels, so we will not waste time here on explaining how to call those. But you call one of those simpler spirits to summon, and fundamentally you will learn with them what to do to prepare yourself spiritually. If I want to give short advice to prepare spiritually for the work with Bhairav, you need to learn meditation. You need to open your chakras. You need to learn how to navigate your Kundalini energy. You need to have a functional relationship with one deity or spirit who is really good for beginners. And then you will use the chant I mentioned here, Nalatava Shivana Natairanku Yananisya, and the yantra you see on the screen to work with Bhairav. What Bhairav does is Bhairav kind of forces spiritual experiences on you. He doesn't give a fuck. That's my experience. Regarding materialistic boons, materialistic stuff, he can grant that, but if he sees that you are venerating him exclusively for material gain, you will have issues. He is not one of the spirits who can be easily convinced or coerced into fulfilling wishes of the practitioner. He is the one who imposes the enlightening reality upon the practitioner, and he will force you to evolve. It will be a pretty forceful evolution, to say the least. So, for the end of this video, let me just relapse how to call Satan and Bhairav individually with their own separate methodologies. So, for Satan, as I said, you need no sigils altogether. Like people use Eliphas Levi sigil Baphomet version, but it's really not meant to represent Satan. There is no clear-cut, checked sigil for Satan in the Christian tradition. I have yet to find one. Majority of the seals, yantras, or sigils dedicated to Satan are new. They don't have like history, like sigil of Paimon, for example. So I don't use sigils when I call Satan. That's like my rule, because like people usually use inverted pentagrams and people use Baphomet representations to represent Satan, but I use none of that shit because it doesn't have historical validity in my opinion. So, as I said before, if I want to call Satan, I raise the sacred space using the black sun by drawing the circle around myself, then envisioning the black sun in front of my third eye, and then envisioning the rays of the black sun penetrating the edges of the circle I will do my ritual in which I am meditating. And then after I feel the dark energy radiating from the edges of the circle, I start chanting the chant Ha Shatan, Ha Shadim, and I chant it until Satan appears. For calling Bhairav, aka the dark form of Shiva, who is from my experience the similar energy to Satan, but kinda different temperament, I use the yantra you see on the screen and the chant Nalatava Shivanan Atairankuyan and Isuyan over and over and over and over until the energies of Bhairav appear, which is the dark form of Shiva, right? So I also advise to you guys to work with other spirits before approaching Bhairav, and out of those two forms, as harsh language as I used for Satan, Satan is much more beginner-friendly form of that. There is a lot of tantrics suggesting that you should approach Bhairav as a beginner, that it's possible, but my guru and people from the Iron World Foundation clearly warned me that beginners should not approach Bhairav unless said otherwise by the spirits. And my experience also confirms that the Bhairav is extremely difficult spirit to work with. By the way, working with him is a potent thing. It's a really potent experience, but it's not fundamentally something which beginners should be getting into. So that's all for you for today, and talk to you soon.